Hey everyone, this is Laura from TheRealLauraB here on YouTube and Twitter. And yeah, I'm really mad about this Amber Heard open letter. And I want to address something specifically in this video right now is the people who signed believe they have grave concerns about rising misuse of defamation lawsuits. And that's what I want to get into today. Hang in there.
Hi, I'm Laura, also known as TheRealLauraB from Twitter, and now here on YouTube. I'm a researcher, new wave internet media, and commentator. I'm not a lawyer nor offering any legal advice. Join me on a journey to review the world of celebrity lawsuits and current events. Let's get started.
Here I'm back again, and I'm still mad. Let's take a look right into it, what we're talking about. In this open letter, they very specifically mention, among other things, I get anybody who claims abuse, they shouldn't be ridiculed. I get that. But at the end of the trial, or throughout the trial, when we saw her testimony, completely conflicting statements, witnesses throwing her under the bus, just proving that this was a massive lies, and the jury agreeing. If you've been lied to by this woman who destroyed this man's life, you're entitled to feel angry and upset. You're not entitled to send death threats, etc. You're entitled to make petitions that I don't think she should be in that film. Johnny was let go. She should be let go. You're entitled to express those kinds of opinions. But this one has made me so mad. I touched base on it with an email that I did with Ann Silvers, but they talk about the misunderstanding of the disinformation. We saw the trial. There was no disinformation. Misogyny. No, people aren't mad at her because they believe a man. They're mad at her because they believe she lied. Biphobia. Where did that come in the trial? I don't even remember it being mentioned, but I can tell you she's apparently an equal opportunity abuser because she was arrested for harming her female partner. That was testified to in court. And she lied about Johnny, and Johnny presented a lot of evidence that she, in fact, had harmed him. A monetized social media environment. Well, gee, NBC, who presented this, you doing this for free? All you other reporters, Taylor Lorenz, Kat Tenbarge, are you working for free? Or is it okay for the legacy media, the corporate media, the mainstream media, presenting these stories with clickbait titles and ad revenue? That's okay for you, but not the lonely YouTuber or Twitter user or TikToker who's presented also information to make a little bit on the side, because it's not very much for most of us. In our opinion, the Depp v. Heard verdict and continued discourse around it, there's no discourse. We're not creating the discourse. We're not the ones putting out threads attacking Johnny Depp constantly. We're not the ones constantly attacking him for work every time he got it with MTV, with Rihanna. The discourse is a disinformation that's been put out there about the trial because people didn't watch it. To indicate a fundamental misunderstanding of IPV and SV. Yeah, I think the fundamental misunderstanding is the jury found that she lied. They found unanimously on all statements that she had defamed Johnny Depp with actual malice. She lied, and she knew she lied. They awarded him $10 million. They awarded him $5 million in punitive damage to send the signal that nobody should ever promote these lies again. And yes, the court reduced that. The misunderstanding of IPV and SV, well, she falsely claimed that he did it. That's the damaging consequences, the lies that harm men. And we covered this in the video I just did with Ann Silvers. The damaging consequences of the spread of this misinformation are incalculable. What misinformation? There was a 6-week trial. Both sides had the opportunity to present their case. She counterclaimed. And this is the part that bothers me. We have grave concerns about the rising misuse of defamation suits to threaten and silence survivors. Well, boy, did they get that one backwards. Because Johnny's not the first one to file a defamation suit in this talk of this instance from May 2016 and all her claims. That's what we're going to get into today. We're going to start with the unsealed documents because this pretty much spells out what Johnny and his team were trying to bring to the jury. So prior irrelevant litigation legal matters. This is on the unsealed documents that Amber Heard is filing a motion in limine to prevent this being brought to the jury. References to and characterization of the October 2018 arbitration and decision should be excluded. She does not want the jury to know about this. Apparently, she doesn't want the people signing that open letter to know about it either. In 2018, Ms. Heard initiated an arbitration against Depp for comments he and his attorney, Adam Waldman, made to GQ, which was the UK version, and other print publications that he had never abused Ms. Heard, that she had attacked him, and that she had falsified evidence suggesting he attacked her. Attachment 25. Guess what? Attachment 25 isn't attached. March 12th, 2019 arbitration decision. So they did not attach the decision. Ms. Heard initiated the arbitration pursuant to her divorce agreement with Depp. The arbitrator found that the case was not arbitratable because he had not been appointed judge pro tem for consulting proceedings under the divorce agreement, and because the divorce agreement did not clearly and unmistakably confer upon him the power to determine the arbitrability. The arbitrator did not decide any of the merits of the lawsuit in any way. Ms. Heard took no further action with respect to attempting to enforce the terms of the settlement agreement. I wonder why that is, because if you go by the date, it was only a few months later that she wrote the op-ed. Maybe she decided to go tit for tat because it was dismissed. Yet Mr. Depp's counsel has made statements in court, in depositions, and in meet and confers, suggesting that Ms. Heard brought a suit and lost, that Ms. Heard fired the first shot, that Judge Messinger, the arbitrator, granted the motion to dismiss and suggested Mr. Depp prevailed on the merits. Ms. Heard moves the court to preclude Mr. Depp from referencing in any manner the arbitration proceeding, including eliciting testimony about the arbitration, suggesting in any manner that Depp won the arbitration, characterizations of the arbitration, that Amber fired the first shot, or anything else relating to it. The arbitration is completely irrelevant to this proceeding, and any reference is prejudicial and will create confusion and likely mislead the jury. At the deposition of Ms. Heard's former counsel, Eric George, on whom Ms. Heard relied for advice, again, she's throwing her lawyer under the bus, that the December 18, 2018 Washington Post op-ed was not actionable by Mr. Depp, including for defamation. Mr. Depp's counsel repeatedly asked questions about the arbitration and suggested the arbitration claim was not meritorious because Mr. Depp had filed a motion to dismiss that was granted for the procedural reasons described above. Attached 26 is the deposition transcript. Mr. Depp asked whether Ms. Heard fired the first shot. Mr. George, an attorney who understood exactly the type of misleading testimony Mr. Chu was trying to elicit, explained that basis for the arbitrator's decision and observed that you're misconstruing a decision based on a procedural ground and trying to suggest that it was based on a substantive ground. And Mr. Chu then tried to elicit testimony that the arbitrator did not award Ms. Heard compensatory or punitive damages. All these questions are clearly designed to mislead the jury into thinking that the arbitrator had ruled on the merits of Ms. Heard's claim, and therefore Mr. Depp, in this case, is alleging he did not abuse Ms. Heard, has already won this through an arbitrating proceeding brought by Ms. Heard. Permitting these sorts of questions or arguments in front of the jury would be highly prejudicial to Ms. Heard, misleading the jury, and irrelevant to the issues in the case. As the evidence shows, the arbitrator did not decide any of the merits of the arbitration case, including the truth or falsity of defamatory statements. The arbitration decision has no relevance to this case. The sole purpose for attempting to introduce the arbitration and decision and to reference it is to confuse the jury into thinking it had already been decided as a matter of law, and that it was not defamatory to say Ms. Heard was not abused by Mr. Depp. This is demonstrably false. The court should therefore preclude any attempt by Mr. Depp or his counsel to use the arbitration to mislead the jury that the truth or falsity of Depp's domestic abuse was decided in the arbitration. Finally, for the same reasons as above, the following, Mr. Depp's trial exhibit should be excluded. And we're now back to characterizations of the UK judgment should be precluded. This is UK. He also wanted to keep out the fact that she had been sued by Nicola. 6 lawsuit. So that's that. So let's take a look at the testimony. And I think it was because Eric George had brought up that Johnny Depp was very litigious and that they had to be very careful with writing the op-ed because they believed that he would sue her. Mr. Depp ever initiated any legal action, be it a lawsuit, arbitration, or demand against your client, Amber Heard? Speculation. Go ahead. Will you say that again in the beginning? You said putting aside the divorce case. Had there ever been any litigation? Oops, I hit my. Sorry. Putting aside the divorce case, had there ever been any litigation or arbitration between your former client, Amber Heard, and Johnny Depp? Not that I recollect. I'm sorry, Ms. Braderhoff, I didn't catch your objection. It was leading, hearsay, foundation, calls for speculation. Again, trying to shut him up. Witness, as I sit here today, not that I recollect. Question, it is fair to say that you and your client fired the first shot. True? So he's already said that there's been no litigation filed at all between your former client, Amber Heard, and Johnny Depp, or arbitration. Not that I recollect. Is it fair to say that you and your client fired the first shot? True? Objection, misstates his testimony. This would be it's his partner, so he's representing Eric. Also speculation, you may answer. No. Why is it not true? Well, look at the letter itself. Is this a love tap? Ben says. He's always very forthright. Let's look to the attachment. Was this arbitration demand filed by Amber Heard against Mr. Depp? What is that? Answer, look at the second paragraph referencing any further public statements that Mr. Depp or his agents may make about Ms. Heard. I think that speaks for itself. This wasn't a love tap. This wasn't a personal letter that they sent to Johnny. This wasn't a cease and desist. This was a filing with the arbitration board. Please describe for us what you intended to convey as Mr. Depp's arbitration document. Did I accurately read that, sir? Yes. Was this a meritorious claim? Objection calls for a legal conclusion. We've been talking about meritorious claims all day long. Because they complained about Johnny having lost in the UK, that was not a meritorious claim. That he was they had suggested that, or Ben Shewitt said he'd been filing lawsuits that he won. He goes, well, he didn't win the UK one, but they were trying to make fun of Johnny for filing so many lawsuits against his lawyer, against his financial manager. We've been talking about meritorious lawsuits all day long. Was that a meritorious claim? Answer, yes. How was it resolved? Or strike that. How did Mr. Depp respond to Ms. Heard's arbitration demand? Go ahead. There was an issue raised whether the parties had complied with the requisite procedures to have any such arbitration claims properly before Judge Pro Tem. So for procedural reasons, this was found not to be properly before the Judge Pro Tem, who we brought this before. Isn't it true that Mr. Depp filed a motion to dismiss? I don't recollect the title of it, but he did file a motion for raising exactly the claim that I just mentioned. Who adjudicated Mr. Depp's motion to dismiss? Again, I believe it was the Judge Pro Tem, a man named Judge Lou Messinger. And is it true that Judge Messinger dismissed Ms. Heard's arbitration demand summarily? Again, not on the merits, but precisely because there was a question about whether the parties stipulated to have these particular disputes heard before him. Yes or no? And as if I remember right, that they had agreed not to sue each other about anything that had occurred prior to the signing of the settlement date. This article happened afterwards, so maybe that was the issue that Judge Messinger said, I'm only supposed to arbitrate about claims relating to the original time period. That might be it. Did Judge Messinger throw out Ms. Heard's arbitration demand? Yes or no? You're misconstruing a decision based on a procedural ground and trying to suggest that it was based on a substantive ground. And I'm telling you that Judge Messinger determined that the parties had not properly dotted their I's and crossed their T's. I think it's dotted their I's and crossed their T's with respect to designating him personally. And as the Judge Pro Tem, and therefore he could not exercise jurisdiction over the claim. There was nothing that he did that addressed the merits of the claim. Motions to dismiss are granted oftentimes not on the merits. Did he or did he not dismiss Ms. Heard's demand for arbitration? Asked and answered. Let's go back. Yeah, asked and answered. And also, objection to the form of the question. It's very argumentative, inappropriate, hearsay leading, foundation, and calls for speculation. Mr. Chu, are you kidding me? You didn't cross-notice this deposition. He did. He cross-noticed it, so he has the ability. So there was an argument about what he could question on. Did Judge Messinger award your client any compensatory damages, which is what they asked for? Objection, hearsay, leading, yes or no, sir. Objection, you're not supposed to be asking those kind of questions. Did he award compensatory damages to your client, yes or no? Again, as I've explained, there was no hearing, and therefore there was no adjudication in favor of or against my client on the merits. Did he award any punitive damages to Ms. Heard? Please answer the question. Did he award any punitive damages to your client or not? So for the reasons I've explained, as there was no bearing whatsoever, since for procedural reasons the matter was not before him, there was no award of punitive damages or any other relief for either side in the proceeding. What communication, if any, did you have with Ms. Heard about Judge Messinger's decision throwing out her demand for arbitration? I will instruct my witness not to answer that. All right, let's make a record, because we are, as Mr. George aptly predicted, we're going to go back to court to get more questions. So that's what happened. So let's talk about this a little bit. They're having a fit that she filed a defamation lawsuit via arbitration, and the judge, Johnny, filed a motion to dismiss, and it was dismissed. Well, geez, how many times has she filed against Johnny's defamation claim to have it dismissed? She filed to have it dismissed against venue or location inconvenient, I think is the English word, or the definition, because they're all located in California, all the witnesses, denied. Kaplan filed to dismiss it because it was an opinion piece. It wasn't about Johnny. Anybody with a grasp of the English language knew it wasn't about Johnny. Well, every outlet out there said, oh, Amber Heard wrote an op-ed about Johnny. 2.5 years ago. 2 years ago, this happened to me. Dismissal denied. They tried to bring in the UK judgment to have it dismissed. He's already tried this case. Dismissal denied. Wait up, hold a minute. We want an interlocutory appeal because we don't agree with you, and we're going to appeal it later unless you hear it now. Dismissal, appeal, denied. They filed a summary judgment right before the trial. They said, hey, he hasn't borne his burden of proof for his status claim. We want it dismissed. Denied. Even after Johnny presented his case, ended his case in chief, they stood up and said they want it struck, and it was denied. So for her to be saying, for them to be saying, oh, it was no big deal that it was denied because, it wasn't based on, there was no verdict, is basically what they're saying. It was dismissed not because of her claim or the merits of her claim. It was just dismissed. Well, I'm sure they would have relied on that. And in the appeal, they are in her points of error. She's already trying to appeal each and every dismissal I just stated. So anyway, let's see what Ben's answer is to this. And again, this is from the unsealed documents. And this is from June. Pursuant to a stipulated protective order, this is why it's sealed. Okay. Ms. Heard's motion number 7 should be denied in its entirety. With respect to the prior arbitration between the parties, Ms. Heard has attempted to characterize this entire lawsuit as a continuation of the abuse she supposedly suffered at Mr. Depp's hands, suggesting that she is an abuse victim who merely wants to move on with her life and is being punished and harassed by daring to speak up against Depp. That narrative is a lie. Ms. Heard was the one who first commenced legal action against Mr. Depp for defamation merely because he denied having committed abuse. Who is misusing defamation lawsuits here? Johnny is just trying to stand up for himself. Look, I did not do this. And if she continues to bring it to the public that I did something I didn't do, that's defamation, and I'm going to prove it. That's not a misuse. And we saw that in the court. And he was vindicated. The narrative is a lie. Ms. Heard was the one who first commenced legal action against Mr. Depp for defamation, merely because he denied having committed abuse. Ms. Heard's acts in firing the first shots this doesn't make sense. Ms. Heard acts in firing the first shot is inconsistent with a major part of Ms. Heard's narrative. and undercuts her characterizations of the actions and motive of both parties. It is also inconsistent with her portrayal of herself as an abuse victim who just wants to move on with her life and forget about Mr. Depp. It is therefore a legitimate avenue of inquiry at trial. Furthermore, the arbitration in question was dismissed on purely procedural grounds without ever reaching the merits, and referencing it at trial is not prejudicial in the slightest, nor will it confuse the jury. The Depp team just wanted them to know when she starts pining away, oh, he's further abusing me for suing me, I just want to get on with life. No, you've already tried this with him. We're not going to talk about the outcome. We can say he was dismissed, but the point is you filed a lawsuit against him to try and shut him up. With respect to the UK judgment, Mr. Depp's position, we already know that is set forth, and that's a separate issue. And same with London Fields. This is all in the same motion. Ms. Heard's commencement of arbitration proceedings is directly relevant. A central narrative of Ms. Heard's case is that she's an innocent victim who was first abused by Mr. Depp during the parties' relationship and then relentlessly hounded in the courts by heroically daring to stand up against abuse. And that's exactly why this open letter ticks me off, because those people who signed it believe that. They don't know that Ms. Heard filed first to shut him up because he dared to say, I didn't do this. I did not do this. See, for instance, Ms. Heard's opposition to Mr. Depp's recent motion to summary judgment, in which Ms. Heard's opening paragraph consists of an angry rant against Mr. Depp for purportedly abusing Ms. Heard in all types of ways, and arguing that because Mr. Depp was not satisfied to simply allow Ms. Heard to move on with her life, he filed this frivolous lawsuit. See, too, Ms. Heard's pending counterclaim in this action, in which she similarly alleges that Mr. Depp was not satisfied simply to allow Ms. Heard to move on with her life. Instead, he continued to victimize her. This frivolous lawsuit Mr. Depp has filed against Ms. Heard continues that abuse and harassment. And this is what the people who signed that letter are believing. Ms. Heard has made it very clear that she intends to characterize implicitly and explicitly this entire case as an extension of her alleged abuse by Mr. Depp. Indeed, Ms. Heard specifically alleges in her counterclaim that this lawsuit is the linchpin in the scheme to destroy Ms. Heard's career, and part of a bitter obsession with destroying Ms. Heard. And that by filing this case, Mr. Depp gives this 4-year-old drama new legs as another opportunity to remain relevant as his star wanes. Mr. Depp is entitled to challenge the narrative at trial, particularly since the narrative is not supported by evidence, and in fact is directly controverted by the very evidence that Ms. Heard seeks to exclude in this motion. In reality, despite her efforts to portray herself as an innocent victim, merely trying to move on with her life and being pursued by her abuser in the courts, it was Ms. Heard, not Mr. Depp, who fired the first shot in this legal battle. Indeed, Ms. Heard commenced an arbitration in 2018 seeking damages for alleged defamation by Mr. Depp as a result of certain of Mr. Depp's alleged statements, simply denying having to commit the abuse. Mr. Depp successfully moved to dismiss the arbitration on purely procedural grounds, i.e. that there is no enforceable agreement between the parties to arbitrate. There was no adjudication on the merits, and Mr. Depp has no intention of arguing otherwise. But what is significant is that Ms. Heard, supposedly an innocent abuse victim who merely wanted to move on with her life, was the one who actually commenced legal action and renewed the parties' dispute. Whether that is consistent with Ms. Heard's characterization of herself and of Mr. Depp is a legitimate area of inquiry at trial. The test for relevance is whether evidence has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable. The fact that Ms. Heard was the one that fired the first shot is directly relevant to refuting Ms. Heard's false narrative that Mr. Depp is somehow obsessed with attacking her in the courts and that she's merely an innocent victim trying to move on with her life. Moreover, Ms. Heard's eagerness to go on the attack is fundamentally inconsistent with her attempt to portray herself as a victim who has spent the last year trying to escape abuse and being wrongfully harassed by litigation. In fact, Ms. Heard's willingness to fire the first shot, not to mention voluntarily testifying and leaking selective documents in the UK action, is perfectly consistent with the actual reality of the parties' relationship, about which evidence will be presented at trial that it was always Ms. Heard, not Mr. Depp, who picked the fights. As for Ms. Heard's argument that a reference to the prior arbitration is somehow prejudicial, the fact that the arbitration was dismissed on purely procedural grounds ensures that it can be raised at trial without any undue prejudice to Ms. Heard. The jury can simply be advised that the arbitrator did not decide one way or the other whether Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard. That is not a difficult concept to grasp and is not beyond the comprehension of the jury. Indeed, given that Ms. Heard is arguing for the inclusion of the UK judgment at trial, which is unparalleled potential to sway and confuse the jury, it is ironic that she's prepared to argue with a straight face that a case dismissed on purely procedural grounds is somewhat unfairly prejudicial. And I think the issue they're trying to state here is she's suing Mr. Depp in this arbitration for defamation because he claimed he did not do this. He claimed, I did not do what she's claiming, all those allegations. I did not do that. With no ruling, the arbitrator isn't saying it's not defamation because Mr. Depp made a truthful statement. So that's what they're trying to say. It's not that whether or not Mr. Depp abused her because there was no decision in the defamation case, so it doesn't go one way or the other. Unlike Depp's case, of course. Ms. Heard's motion in limine number 7 should be denied as to her arbitration demand and as to Mr. Depp's trial exhibits. I wish we had the orders. I would love to know exactly what the judge allowed and didn't allow, the pieces and parts. And it could be that they said Ms. Heard can't claim that he's abusing her with the trial. Keeping in mind that Johnny won, 7 jurors unanimously found that she lied with actual malice, knowing she lied, and they awarded $10 million for that defamation. People say, they're trying to say it had nothing to do with the abuse. It had to do with whether she lied. Yeah, it had to do with she defamed him and lied about the allegations of abuse that the jury said didn't happen. They awarded her $5 million in punitive damages with the hopes that people would take their verdict so seriously that they would never repeat these claims. So I posted this recently. And again, my whole point is that the people who signed this letter thought Johnny or victims should not be further harassed because people filed defamation claims against him. Well, Johnny won. There was no misinformation, disinformation. But I was reminded of something. Beatrix Kiddo. She tried to shut up Douug Stanhope, too, with the defamation lawsuit. And someone else had said the same thing. So, yay, yeah. Douug, as a witness, came forward and he wrote in the rap saying, hey, this isn't true. We were with Johnny that afternoon, and he was terrified that she was going to make the most egregious claims against him. And I will get to the article, but I thought I'd start with this letter first to remind you all, and I know it's blurry and it's a terrible copy. It's the only one I could get. Let's remember, before Amber Heard got her TRO, when she knew Johnny was going to file for divorce because he had said so, she filed first. Covered this a little bit the other day with Ann Silver saying, when these people are done with you and they're ready to move on, it's usually because they have somebody else on the hook. She had Elon Musk. We know that from the text. We know Elon texted that he was surprised Johnny still had keys to the condo and he was going to provide security. She quickly filed for divorce before Johnny had a chance to look good in Elon's eyes. That's only my speculation because she was apparently with him already, at least a good friend. But this is the letter that was sent. It was sent to Mr. Bloom, who was no longer his. This is an entertainment lawyer, so it wasn't even sent to John. I'm not sure when he got it. Please be advised that our firm has filed a petition of dissolution of marriage on behalf of Amber Depp. As you may be aware, your client and Amber's husband, Johnny Depp, violently attacked and threatened Amber on Saturday night, May 21st, in their penthouse apartment located at 849 South Broadway. There are several witnesses to this particular incident, and there are photographs depicting the property damage Johnny caused, as well as the physical injuries he inflicted on Amber. And of course, we know the LAPD immediately came out and said, oh, wait, sorry, surprise. In case you didn't all know this, we actually responded to a 911 call there, and we saw no injury, and we saw no damage. And further surprise, months later, we find out there was people there with the body cam, and there was no damage to be seen, in light of Josh Drew's testimony that all they did was sweep up a little bit of glass for the dogs. We didn't clean anything else up. We didn't clean up the wine. He said they didn't clean anything up. They left it all as it is for the next day. They just got the glass up for the dogs. Unfortunately, this is not the first incident of domestic violence perpetrated by Johnny against Amber. In fact, there have been 2 other incidents in the past 6 months. Although Amber is afraid of Johnny, she strongly insists that we do everything possible to keep this personal matter out of the media spotlight, which is why she has not sought a Cleats DVTRO, and why we did not arrange for Johnny to have been personally served at last night's movie premiere. They were going to serve him on the red carpet, and that's the message they're saying. They're saying, you know what, she's afraid of him, but as long as you give us all into our demands, she won't get a TRO. I mean, how does that protect you if you're really frightened for your life? If you're not going to get the TRO as long as you give me what I want. And oh, by the way, we were going to humiliate you the other night on the red carpet, throwing out the threat that I'm going to further humiliate you publicly if you don't give in. Amber wishes to work quickly towards a private and amicable resolution of all matters, but she will need Johnny's immediate cooperation to do so. To this end, please have Johnny promptly sign and return by Friday, May 27th, the endorsed notice and acknowledgement of receipt form confirming service of the summons, petition, family law case cover sheet, and blank response form. If the requested notice is not signed and original executed form is not returned to me by May 27th, we will have no alternative but to arrange for Johnny to be personally served. In addition, now, Laura Wasser testified that she didn't hear back, that they got the TRO before the end of business, May 27th. So they got the TRO and they never got a chance to answer it. In addition, we are requesting on Amber's behalf the following: appropriate pendant light support, exclusive use and possession of the black Range Rover, the vehicle that she is currently driving with Johnny, to continue to make all payments for any encumbrances therein. So she didn't want to own it. She wants him to still own it because it was being leased, and he had to pay everything about it for it. Exclusive use and possession of the 849 South Broadway penthouse numbers 1. Now let's think about this. Penthouse 1, where Raquel and Josh were living. Penthouse 3, that had been their primary residence. And penthouse 5, that she was using for her closet, her office, her art studio, occasional parties. She had her makeup done there. She wanted 3 penthouses, the full exclusive use and possession. She's not asking for ownership because she knows legally in community property state she's not entitled to those because they were purchased before their marriage. But she wants full use and possession with Johnny to continue to pay mortgage, utilities, etc., associated therewith. And a contribution towards her reasonable and necessary attorney's fees in the amount of $100,000 and $25,000 for forensic accounting costs to be paid to my firm by close of business 5 p.m. on May 27, 2016. By 5 p.m. Further, I believe it would be beneficial for all if this case was assigned to a private retired judicial officer for the purposes. My proposed list of retired judicial officers is as follows, in which they name a bunch. The fees of the judicial officer can be paid with funds from the party's community estate. Kindly let me know at your earliest convenience if you or your client are agreeable to doing so and the officers are acceptable. Upon hearing from you, I will have my assistant obtain rates and availabilities. We are indeed hopeful that we can swiftly work out mutually acceptable short and long-term solutions outside the public eye. Thank you. I look forward to your prompt follow-up and reply. Now, I've been following this since 2016, so maybe I have a lot of viewers that were not aware of this. But yeah, Johnny owns 5 penthouses there. Isaac Baruch was living in one of them, number 2, I believe. So he owned 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. She wants full possession of 1, 3, and 5, meaning she wants her friends. I don't know what's worse I've ever heard of, where one of the partners can say, hey, and I want a multi-million-dollar downtown LA condo that my friends get to live in for free, and you take care of all the expenses. But that's what's here, penthouse number 1. She didn't ask for penthouse 2 or 4, which means Johnny still could come and go there anytime he wanted because he owned them. So how afraid was she that she wasn't going to get the TRO as long as you gave me everything I asked for? Amber Heard stated multiple times, and including a written statement with the UK, that she was financially independent from Johnny through the entire relationship. She never depended on him for money. And that's why she was donating the full settlement, because she had no interest in depending on him. And Judge Nickel believed that. She said, how can she be a gold digger if she was not going to keep any of this money? Judge Nichols had this letter, by the way. And so did the Virginia court. So let's see what was happening back then. Amber Heard's dire finances revealed court documents that show she earns $10,000 a month, but spends almost $44,000 on basic expenses, clothes, vacations, eating out, plus $300 on laundry. Amber Heard's dire financial situation has been revealed after court documents show the actress is losing money at an alarming rate. The 30-year-old filed for divorce from husband Johnny Depp last week, requesting he pay her spousal support of $50,000 a month, plus her legal costs. Well, plus whatever else was in that letter. The actress cited irreconcilable differences for the split, which has triggered a battle over Depp's huge fortune. Now, in income and expense documents filed by Ms. Heard's team, it has shown that she makes roughly $120,000 per year from her business interests before receiving payment for any films she might appear in. The files also show that her basic monthly expense is around, her basic income is around, I think they mean $10,000, but she spends almost $44,000 a month on basic expenses. So who's been paying this $34,000 a month overage since she's been with Johnny? If she's independently financially separate from him. Sorry, I'm just so pissed. This includes $10,000 a month on rent, another $10,000 a month on entertainment, gifts, and vacations, $2,000 a month on clothes, $2,000 a month on eating out, and even $300 a month on laundry and dry cleaning. The actress also spent $2,000 on auto expenses and transport, and her red Dodge Charger is still parked outside Depp's palatial Los Angeles home. In addition, she also spends another $10,000 a month on miscellaneous costs such as pet supplies and paying her publicist and agent. And this is the forms that were filed, and Daily Mail has them. Let's see if we can zoom in on some of this. Sorry, guys. I did have it zoomed. So she's saying, yeah, it's all here. She's paying rent in $2,000 a month. This is what she's claiming she paid. I'm not sure what rent she paid, or maybe this is what she anticipates she's going to pay on the income that she had. I don't know. Homeowners, renters insurance, maintenance and repair, healthcare costs, groceries, $2,000 a month on household groceries. And that's not what I spend. Eating out. So on top of $2,000 a month for groceries, she's also going to spend $2,000 a month eating out. $1,000 on utilities, $500 for her cell phone, and I guess her internet plan, $300 for laundry and cleaning, dry cleaning, $2,000 a month on clothes, $10,000 a month on entertainment, gifts, and vacation. $2,000 a month auto expenses and transportation, insurance, gas, repairs, etc. Now, we already know she demanded the Range Rover fully covered, but he denied that. Actually, didn't have a chance to deny it. She just went ahead and filed the TRO before the end of business. Charitable contributions, $500. Pledges? I don't know. Other miscellaneous grooming, pet supplies, and or agent attorney, $10,000 a month. And total expenses of $43,000. And then it was all tallied up about where she was getting her income from. What's the point? What's the point? I think it looks like this. I know it's very bad. So this is some of the income she was getting from some of the work she did and what she paid out. She's also paying her attorney, Samantha Spector, $550 per hour to represent her. This won't move over for me for some reason. Last year, her total income, including cash from her film work and promotions, was $250,000, while her expenditure was $209,000, leaving her a very small profit. However, the papers show that so far this year, she only earned $26,000, but has spent $55,000 on professional expenses related to her production company. Related to her production company? She also has $25,000 of savings in the bank and is still making residuals from her roles like The Rum Diaries and Magic Mike. Here's Johnny's home. And I'm not sure where they're claiming the car is because there's the front entrance. I would think the car park is under here somewhere. It looks like a driveway. Oh, there's the car. Hurt's car appeared to be parked in the driveway at Duff's house in Los Angeles. Who knows when this was taken? And there's the pimple, according to Johnny's expert witness. So there you go. So since I was reminded of Douug, let's take a look at the article that he wrote. Uh-oh. Hopefully I can get through this without having to sign up for anything. That didn't come up before. Johnny Depp is being blackmailed by Amber Heard. Here's how I know. Guest column with the Wrap. Actress friend comic Douug Stanhope says that Heard was threatening to lie about him publicly in any and every possible duplicitous way if he didn't agree to her terms. And we just read the letter of the terms. And we know in addition to that letter was $50,000 a month. Update. Amber Heard's attorney says the claim that Amber Heard is blackmailing Johnny is unequivocally false. If she was so afraid of him that she wasn't going to get the TRO, why was she allowing him to take care of all the penthouses and be available? Anyway, we went through that. It's almost 4 a.m. and I can't sleep, not even dozing off. Today, a friend of mine was pillared in the press for DV, coupled with a picture of his wife with a bruise. He was murdered on social media. I watched it happen, and I didn't say an effing word, even though I knew it was bull. We'd watched it build like this since before they were married. We watched her manipulate and F with him for years. We didn't say a word to each other. Yes, we to each other, but never to him. When your friend is in an awful abusive relationship, man or woman, and you risk weighing in that their counterpart is a demon, you know, the odds are they will jump right back into the fire and then dump you from their life for being honest. Most of us have been on one side or both sides of this coin, choosing to be blinded or removing the people who have clearer eyes that can guide you. The fact that Hollywood and the entertainment industry at large, the society as a whole, turns a blind eye to domestic V is abhorrent. Sorry, I gotta watch YouTube. But the tides have turned in such a way that the mere allegation that such a crime has occurred leaves the person accused as guilty without due process. And going back to that letter again, the open letter, how dare he file for defamation? How dare he say she lied? He just needs to take it. My girlfriend Bingo and I have known Johnny Depp for a few years now. We have watched Amber Heard F with him at his weakest, or watched him at his weakest from being F'd with for the entire time we've known him. And we didn't say shit because he's Johnny Depp. And we didn't want to be thrown out of the circle for saying that the emperor was being stripped of his clothes. It isn't my place to name the people who agreed with us, but I couldn't name one person closely associated with him that didn't feel the same. But nobody said shit to his face. Bingo and I were at Johnny's house for most of that Saturday until just before the alleged assault. We assumed initially that his dour mood was because of his mother's death the day before, but he opened up in the most vulnerable of ways that was not only his mother, but that Amber was now going to leave him. Threatened to lie about him publicly in any way, in every possible duplicitous way, if he didn't agree to her terms. Blackmail is what I would imagine other people might put it, including the manner in which he is now being vilified. We stopped not saying shit. And this makes sense to me after seeing testimony and texts and everything else that Johnny had already said, hey, I want a divorce. And Amber is basically saying, you're going to divorce me. I'm going to make all these claims. And then she followed through because she had Elon. And so it seems from all the texts we saw. Bingo and I together then separately told him how much we were aware of the manipulation a-hole. How his closest circle had all agreed on this since the day we met, and that we all feared that telling him outright might alienate us. Love makes you do funny things. I told him the truth, and I half expected to be asked to leave, but I wasn't seeing Johnny Depp. I saw a naked emperor, and we told him to get dressed. Other people came in and out during the afternoon, all verifying that we'd been cowardly, saying things only behind his back for so long. He seemed dumbstruck that nobody had ever come clean about this, and he thanked everyone for being honest. He still pronounced his love for Amber. We heard him say that on the phones, that he loved her, but ultimately he realized that she wasn't the woman he thought. He wasn't the woman he fell in love with. It was a made-up thing in his head. He still pronounced his love for Amber, but was presciently aware that she was going to pull off some kind of ruse to F him over. He hadn't slept in days with anxiety. You'd call him paranoid if you didn't know better. But he knew better, and he was right. As he finally felt that he could sleep, we left him. From what we now read in the news, later that night, the police were called to his house for a domestic dispute. Finding no criminal act had occurred and no signs of physical abuse, the police left. Everything Johnny had told us that she'd been threatening had actually come to be. It blew up in the news, raced through the internet like a plague, and blew up on Twitter like it was the McMartin child abuse scandal. People are swarming with torches on social media. I watched it all happen ahead of time, and I watched it come to fruition today. And I haven't been able to sleep again because I didn't say shit to defend him. Why? Because I felt like defending him, I would come across as a sycophant, trying to attach myself to a sensationalized story in order to further my career. A latter-day Cato Kalin. And now as the sun is coming up, I realize not saying shit to defend him is far worse crime of ego, to leave a friend hanging so you don't look like a suck-up. I and the we that weren't there aren't suck-ups or apologists. We were witnesses. I didn't jump into the fray because I was weak. It was because I didn't want to look like a name dropper. I'll name drop now. Johnny Depp is my friend. But any one of my friends will tell you I always call them out on bullshit. Abusing women is bullshit. Johnny didn't abuse anyone. And he told me that day ahead of time that she'd pull some kind of shit like this. Remember, he was going over there to say he wanted a divorce. That's what they were supposed to talk about. And as he was leaving, she started screaming that he hit her. And his security came in, and he was across the room going, so he knew what she was going to claim. Johnny Depp got used, manipulated, set up, and made to look like an a-hole. And he saw it coming, and he didn't or couldn't do anything to stop it. He may never talk to me again for saying it, but I never forgive myself for not coming to his defense out of fear and ego. I stand up for my friends, and I tell the effing truth. Douug Stanhope is a stand-up comedian and hosted Comedy Central's The Man Show and has appeared on Howard Stern's show. I got a chance to meet Douug Stanhope and Bingo, and especially his manager. And his manager told me a lovely story that that he may not be the biggest name in comedy, but he is highly respected by his peers. And he said because he stood up for Johnny publicly, that many of the comedians respected him for that and chose not to use Johnny's situation as comedic fodder. And I thought that was great. That's what his manager told me. So back to Twitter. Vera Katie says, hey, a copy of Heard's complaint and Stanhope's reply is here. She dropped it before we learned who Doe's 1 to 20 are. Well, 1 to 20 is always, they always had John Doe's or Jane Doe's in case during discovery they find out that somebody wrote, let's say that somebody wrote this form, they would be included. But yeah, let's take a look at her claim. Let's see if I can zoom this in. Yeah. No, I can't I can't seem to get rid of, let's see if I can do it this way. I know it's a bad Xerox copy of it. It's pretty blurry. So this is Amber Heard filing against Douug Stanhope on June 3rd, 2016. June 3rd. Pretty quick. Summary of the case. And he is in Arizona, as far as I know. Yeah, Arizona is where Douug lives. Defendants orchestrated a plot to write an article. And when it says defendants, it's because they've got Doe's 1 through 20. Maybe they thought Bingo was involved. Maybe they thought somebody from Johnny's team was involved. I don't know. Defendants orchestrated a plot to write an article, which was published at TheRealLauraB, which falsely accuses plaintiff Amber Heard of blackmail and other criminal behavior towards her husband, Johnny Depp, from whom she is seeking divorce. The allegations about her in the article are completely false and defamatory and have caused and will continue to cause her tremendous harm. Defendants engaged in the scheme to try to divert public attention away from the true facts regarding Depp, which caused their marriage to fail, namely that Depp repeatedly abused her throughout their marriage, at times to the point of her fearing for her life. She wasn't in a hurry to get that TRO. Heard was forced to seek a court protective order to protect her from the ongoing physical abuse and violence by her husband, Depp, because he wouldn't give her the condos that he still owned, including the neighboring condos that he could come and go from anytime he wanted. During their marriage, Heard gave, that's another thing in that letter. She never once asked for a voluntary stay away. I want all of this, and I want you to agree to never come near me or contact me. She never put that in the letter. Sorry, just thought popped in their mind. During their marriage, Heard gave Depp numerous chances to get and stay sober and change his violent behavior towards her. When she finally realized that Depp was not changing his behavior and to avoid further injury and risk to her life, Heard took the very difficult step of filing for divorce and seeking a TRO, protective order. In response to Heard's truthful and necessary court filings, defendants took action to publicly defame Ms. Heard by falsely accusing her of blackmail and other criminal conduct, knowing that he had no factual basis to make the allegations. Well, they had the letter that was made public. Defendants' statements are completely false and highly defamatory. Defendants are engaged in a classic case of attacking the victim in an effort to discredit Heard, destroy her good name and reputation, and severely harm her hard-earned entertainment career on top of the campaign of violence that Depp has inflicted upon her for years. This is so much easier to read when you know that the jury came back unanimously that she lied. To counter the setback to the progress of women by the defendant's actions, Amber Heard pursues the maximum possible damages against defendants and will donate all the proceeds of this lawsuit into a battered women's shelter in Arizona. The parties: plaintiff Amber Heard, currently residing in LA, defendant Douug Stanhope, living in Bisbee, Arizona. Stanhope is one of Depp's closest personal friends. Heard is informed and believes, and based therein alleges, that defendants, and each of them designated herein as Does 1 through 20, inclusive, are responsible in some manner for the occurrences and the happenings herein alleged, and that Heard's damages are herein alleged were and are the direct and proximate result of the actions of said defendants and of each of them. Said defendants are sued as principals or agents, partners, servants, and employees of said principal, or any combination thereof, and all the acts performed by them as agents, partners, servants, and employees were performed within the course of the scope of their employment and with the knowledge, consent, approval, and ratification of said principals and each of them. Heard is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges, that at all times mentioned herein, each of the defendants was the agent, employee, partner of each of the remaining defendants, and was acting within the scope and authority of such agency, employment, and partnership with the knowledge, consent, approval, and ratification of the remaining defendants and each of them. Whenever in this complaint reference is made to the act of the defendant, such allegations shall be deemed to mean the acts of the defendants named in the particular cause of action, in each of them acting individually, jointly, and severally. Facts common to all causes of the action. Amber Heard is an award-winning actress who has credits in more than 40 movies and television. As we read this, I'm going to jump to Stanhope's answer because it will help us. So he's going to say, I admit that he wrote the article. Amber Heard, does this have paragraphs? Number 1. So I guess we're going to have to go to the actual allegations. Amber Heard is an award-winning actress. Award-winning? 2016? Who has credits in more than 40 movies and television shows. Heard has been in a relationship with Depp for 5 years and married to Depp since February 3rd, 2015. During the course of his relationship with Heard, Depp has repeatedly been physically and verbally abusive to Heard. Depp has hit and kicked Heard on numerous occasions, has thrown objects at her, and at one point nearly suffocated her to the point where she feared for her life. Depp is an alcoholic and a drug addict, and these violent episodes occurred mostly after Depp had relapsed into a cycle of substance abuse. His drug and alcohol abuse has increased dramatically in recent years, as has his violent behavior. Heard repeatedly returned to Depp, despite her verbal and physical mistreatment of her, hoping optimistically that the man she married would change his behavior. Each time Heard returned, however, within months, the cycle of substance abuse and violence repeated. Throughout the years, Heard has documented the efforts of the abuse that she suffered at the hands of Depp, including numerous photographs of bruises and injuries caused by Depp's abuse, among other forms of evidence. She really didn't expect to go to trial. In May 2016, after 15 months of marriage and numerous instances of abuse, matters came to a head when Heard was consoling Depp after his mother died. In his altered state, Depp was incensed by a delusion, blew up at Heard and flew into a rage, threw her phone at her, then violently grabbed Heard by the hair while assaulting her, and verbally and physically threatened neighbors and witnesses who came in the house to help. Well, that didn't happen. The only one who came in was Raquel. Delusion? because someone had pooped in the bed. Not the dog. Heard reached a breaking point and filed for divorce promptly thereafter. As part of the divorce filing, Heard sought a domestic violence restraining order against Depp, which included a photograph, one of many, showing the bruises and injuries caused to Depp by Depp's abuse. Well, no, as part of the divorce filing, she first sent that demand letter that says, look, I'm not going to get a TRO. I might serve you on the red carpet unless you give me all these things. They left that part out. Heard's divorce filing received substantial publicity because Depp is a noted Hollywood celebrity whose personal life is routinely covered by the entertainment industry press. I find this interesting because they just started off with how she's a star, but it wouldn't have gotten any press about her. Depp and his representatives have numerous connections in the entertainment industry and the entertainment industry press who will do his bidding and serve his interests to obtain from him, in turn, favors, access, and other benefits. After the May 2016 DV incident, Depp commenced a publicity tour for his new film, and his representatives contacted numerous members of the press to discredit Heard and subvert her truthful allegations. I assume they're talking about TMZ finding out that she'd been arrested for DV against her female partner before. Depp and his representatives further vent on the offensive during the publicity tour by repeatedly making false public allegations about Heard to the press, accusing her of being manipulative, a blackmailer, and blaming her for the breakup of the marriage, as if Depp's alcoholism, drug addiction, and campaign of violence against his wife played no part. Depp's publicity tour was coordinated by Depp and his powerful representatives, who surreptitiously disseminated numerous false statements about Heard. As a result of this coordinated malicious campaign, a number of news organizations have repeated these false statements, disparaging Heard and harming her reputation and career. Defendants were well aware that their defamatory statements and press organization would have this effect on Heard, and defendants have the specific intent to cause harm to Heard when they made these statements to the press. On May 29th, an article written by Stanhope entitled "Johnny Depp is being blackmailed by Amber Heard. Here's how I know," guest column, the defamatory article, was posted on the website TheRealLauraB.com. On information and belief, Stanhope wrote the defamatory article at the request of and with active input from others whose identities are currently unknown and therefore have been named in this action as Doe. When their identities have been revealed through further investigation and discovery, their names will be identified herein and included as named defendants. The defamatory article contains the following false defamatory statements. The headline: Johnny Depp is being blackmailed by Amber Heard. Heard was threatening to lie about Depp publicly in any way, in every possible duplicitous way, if he didn't agree to her terms. Well, we saw the letter of the terms that they probably conveniently leave out of this. Today, a friend of mine was pillared in the press for domestic violence, coupled with a picture of his wife with a bruise. He was murdered on social media. I watched it happen, and I didn't say an effing word, even though I knew it was bullshit. Well, that happened. But I guess the part of even though I knew. We'd watched it build like this since they were married. We'd watched her manipulate and F with him for years. When your friend is in an awful abusive relationship, man or woman, and you risk weighing in that their counterpart, referring to Heard, is a demon, you know the odds are that they will jump right back into the fire and then dump you from their life for being honest. My girlfriend Big One and I, so there's quite a lot of statements here. Let me skip down for the sake of time because I did just read the article, so I know it's fresh in your mind. Each of these statements is false and defamatory. A through K. Heard never undertook any action that could even remotely be described as blackmail. Seriously. Quite to the contrary. Heard told Depp that if he did not change his alcohol and drug-fueled abusive behavior towards her, that she would have no alternative but to leave him, even though she loved him and wanted their marriage to work. Heard has never threatened. Now, we have text messages that Johnny said he was going to the penthouse that night to break up, to end his marriage. Heard has never threatened to lie about Depp in public. We just read the letter. If you don't give in to all my demands, I might even serve you on the red carpet. To the contrary, all the allegations Heard has made in her marital dissolution proceeding and request for a restraining order, including her accounts of physical and verbal abuse by Depp against her, are true. Not according to the Virginia jury. Heard has never attempted to improperly manipulate Depp or F with him. Rather, she loved him. Well, we heard those audios. Whew. Rather, she loved him and gave him numerous chances to change his behavior and end the cycle of alcoholism, drug abuse, and physical and verbal abuse of her. Yet Depp would not and has not changed his behavior, precipitating her to file for divorce and seek a restraining order. On information and belief, defendants' many defamatory statements in the defamatory article were made as part of a calculated publicity campaign to smear Heard for having the temerity to file for divorce and seek a court order to protect her physical safety. Defendants knew the statements about Heard in the defamatory article are completely untrue and fabricated, and they did not care. That's the actual malice part that they would have to prove because she's a celebrity or public person. Because their only concern was helping Depp by trashing the reputation of his wife, who loved Depp, even though she had been repeatedly physically and verbally abused by him. Remember, motions are allegations with shade. Heard, through her attorney, demanded that TheRealLauraB take down the defamatory article and issue a retraction. TheRealLauraB has refused to do so, and it's still live because I just pulled it up and read it. First cause of action. Heard incorporates by this reference paragraphs 1 through 25 of the complaint. The statements in the article were and are false. The statements in the article were and of concerning Heard. The defamatory article brought Heard into disrepute, contempt, or ridicule and purported to impeach Heard's honesty, integrity, and virtue and or reputation. Defendants published the defamatory article knowing or recklessly disregarding the statements therein and false. The statements in the defamatory article are defamatory per se. Heard suffered actual damage for her personal and professional reputation and career in the amount to be proven at trial. Defendants intend to injure Heard were motivated by spite or ill will and acted to serve their own interest, having reason to know and consciously disregarding a substantial risk to his conduct might significantly injure Heard and consciously pursue a course of conduct knowing that it created a second risk, substantial risk of significant harm to Heard. Again, incorporating all those paragraphs, intentional infliction of emotional distress, which means they would have had to get a Dr. Curry involved. Defendants' conduct was extreme and outrageous. Defendants intended to cause harm, Heard emotional distress, and were recklessly disregarded that their conduct would do so. Defendants' conduct has resulted in Heard suffering severe emotional distress. Defendants knew that their false statements of fact in the defamatory article were false at the time the statements were made, and or with reckless disregard to the truth. Heard has suffered actual damages in the amount to be proven at trial. Defendants intended to injure Heard were motivated by spite or ill will, acted to serve their own interests, having reason to know and consciously disregarding a substantial risk that their conduct might significantly injure Heard, and consciously pursued a course of conduct knowing that it created a substantial risk and significant harm to Heard. Torturous interference with existing and prospective economic relationships against all defendants. So they're all those paragraphs. Again, Heard, as a working actress, has prospective economic relationships with a number of individuals and entities in the entertainment industry, the fashion industry, and many other industries who may seek to use her services. Defendants at all relevant times were aware of Heard's status as an actress and her prospective economic relationships within the industry. Defendants published the defamatory article with the intent to interfere with Heard's actual and prospective economic relationships and to cost her valuable work in the industry, to add pressure to Heard to resolve the pending divorce case on favorable terms, and also in retaliation for Heard's decision to end her marriage with Depp and protect her safety by seeking a restraining order against Depp. In the alternative, defendants' action were negligent, and they disregarded the risk that by publishing the defamatory article, they would harm Heard's prospective economic relationships. As a result of defendants' actions, Heard has suffered actual damages in the amount to be proven at trial. Defendants intended to injure Heard were motivated by spite or ill will and acted to serve their own interests, having reason to know and consciously disregarding a substantial risk that their conduct might significantly injure Heard, and consciously pursued a course of conduct knowing that it would create significant risk of significant harm to her. Prayer for relief. They want a jury trial. Actual damages according to proof. Punitive damages. Costs for the suit. For such other and further relief as may be just and proper. And there's no attachments. Can you imagine how much this would cost Douug Stanhope to have to defend this, Johnny's friend, just because he spoke up and wanted to say, hey, this didn't happen. This is what I witnessed. And now, of course, we have the Virginia trial. We have all those vile recordings. And we have the demand letter. This is his answer. Mr. Stanhope admits that he wrote an article, the fans of which speak for themselves, the facts of which speak for themselves, and that such an article was originally published on Mr. Stanhope's website. Let's see, does this match up with the beginning? That he did write the article. Number 2, he denies. He denies that in an effort to discredit her, that he was doing it just to discredit her and destroy her good name. He denies that to counter the setback in the progress of women by the defense actions. 4, he admits plaintiff Amber Heard is an individual residing in California and Douug Stanhope resides in Arizona. He admits that. 8, he denies. 6, it was informed and believes based on the individual. So these are about the defendants. She's informed and believes that at all times that whoever wrote this was party to it. No, he's denying. He's denying all of this. He denied that whenever in this complaint reference is made to the act of the defendant, such allegations shall be deemed to mean the acts of the defendant named. He's denying everything. He admits to 9 and 10. She is an award-winning actress with over 40 movies, and Heard has been in a relationship with Depp for all this time. He admits to those. He denies 11. During the course of the relationship, Depp repeatedly harmed her. He denies. To the extent the allegation of this paragraph relate to plaintiff's subjective hopes and beliefs, defendant lacks sufficient knowledge upon which to form a belief as to those allegations and therefore denies the same. In other respects, denies. So you can't say she's trying to say why he wrote this, and he's saying no. Deny. 13, 14, he's pretty much admit that the plaintiff recently filed for divorce, admit that the plaintiff sought certain judicial relief as to Mr. Depp, denies the remaining allegations, admits that plaintiff's divorce filing received substantial publicity, and that both plaintiff and Mr. Depp are public figures, admit that Mr. Depp is a popular celebrity and that his life is routinely covered by the press, further admit that as a result of his success, Mr. Depp has connections to the entertainment industry, deny the remaining allegations, admit that Mr. Depp has engaged in efforts to promote films at various times, deny the remaining allegations of the paragraph, admit that Mr. Depp has engaged in efforts to promote films at various times, deny the rest. Mr. Stanhope admits that he wrote an article, the facts of which speak for themselves, and that such article was originally published on Mr. Stanhope's website first. Mr. Stanhope denies all remaining allegations. Mr. Stanhope admits that he wrote the article, and the facts of which speak for themselves, and that such article was originally published on his website. He's denying everything. Defendant lacks sufficient knowledge upon which to form a belief as to those allegations and therefore denies the same. That was in 25. Heard through her attorney demanded the rap take it down. He doesn't know that. He has no knowledge of that. First affirmative defense. The complaint and each cause of action set forth therein fails to state any claim upon which relief may be granted. Without acknowledging that such... Let's start off with, because the media always forgets to do this. Defendant generally denies each and every allegation of the complaint, except as expressly written, admitted herein. So he admitted that he wrote the article. Defendant demands a trial by jury as to all matters to be triable. The complaint and each cause of action set forth fails to state a claim. Second affirmative defense. And he has to put all these in here because he can't rely on them later if he doesn't put them in there now. Without acknowledging that such is an affirmative defense as opposed to an affirmative element of plaintiff's case, the complaint and each cause of action set forth therein is barred to the extent defendant's statements were published without actual malice. Without acknowledging that such an affirmative defense, so he's not saying that these may be wrong, but I didn't do it with actual malice. So these are just things he has to reserve. Without acknowledging that such an affirmative defense as opposed to an affirmative element, the complaint and each defendant defamation-based cause of action set forth therein is barred to the extent that any statements of the concerning plaintiffs were in fact true. To the extent plaintiff asserts multiple causes of actions founded upon a single publication, which claims are barred in part of Arizona's Uniform Single Publication Act. Fifth, without acknowledging such an affirmative defense as opposed to an affirmative element, plaintiff claims are barred by the Communications Decency Act to the extent such claims seek to treat defendant as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. That may be all the does. Any claims to set forth in the complaint are barred to the extent that the statements which forms the basis for such claims have caused no greater harm to plaintiff's reputation than the truth would have caused. Wherefore, being fully answered plaintiff's complaint, defendant Douug Stanhope prays for the following relief: dismiss the plaintiff's complaint with prejudice and order that plaintiff take nothing thereby. Deny with prejudice any equitable injunction and or declaratory relief in the form requested by the plaintiff. Award the defendant his cost of suit and such and other further relief that the judge in court will allow. So there you have it. So let's go back. We have grave concerns about the rising misuse of defamation suits to threaten and silence survivors. In addition, we are requesting Amber Heard's behalf the following: appropriate pendente life support. We know she wanted $50,000. Exclusive use and possession of the black Range Rover, the vehicle she is currently driving, with Johnny to contribute to make all payments for any encumbrances therein. Exclusive use and possession of penthouse 1, 3, and 5, with Johnny to continue to pay mortgage, utilities, and associated therewith, and a contribution towards her reasonable and necessary attorney's fees in the amount of $100,000 and $25,000 for forensic accounting costs to be paid to her law firm. At no time in this letter does Amber Heard ask that Johnny voluntarily stay away. At no time. Say, wait, don't contact me. Although Amber is afraid of Johnny, she strongly insists that we do everything possible to keep this person out of the spotlight, which is why she's not sought a TRO at this point, and we did not arrange for Johnny to be personally served at last night's movie premiere. I just think these things are worth repeating. Who used defamation lawsuits to shut the other one down? She's filed against Douug Stanhope because he spoke up for Johnny, saying, this is the truth. This is the truth as I know it. That was his claims in the answer. She filed a defamation suit against Johnny when he finally spoke up in the GQ article, saying, I did not do this. He simply was saying, I did not do this. And she tried to shut him down with a defamation lawsuit via arbitration. That's the ones who's doing this. And yet these people who signed this letter have no idea what went on in the past, and they probably have no idea what happened at the trial. And that's what's so upsetting. We support the ability for all, let's go on that one. We support the ability of all to report IPV and SV free of harassment and intimidation, except if you're Johnny Depp, except if you're a man. We covered that in yesterday's video or the last week's video, and I will attach that here. So that's what I have for today. I'm just so bothered by this, that these people who signed this letter really are the ones that have been fed misinformation, that they don't know, or omission, if you will, of information that would have probably changed their minds if they had known. Amber Heard was being paid to speak on these subjects. It was on the website. It was reported in Daily Mail. It was at least $33,000, I think it was, per. Anyway, that's what I have for you to do. These are the legal documents. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. Any opinion is an opinion of my own that I've learned from reading these things. Any opinions of my own that I've learned through watching the trial every day. Any opinion I've learned through the unanimous verdict. And remember, it was 7 people had to unanimously find, which they did, that Amber Heard had defamed Johnny with actual malice, knowing she lied, awarding her substantial punitive damages in addition to compensatory damages. Ben Rottenborn stood there and said to the jury, you only need to find one credible incident, one credible allegation, and Johnny Depp loses. And they could not find for one. And that's the trial I saw. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you have a great day. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm still trying to make it here. YouTube is still picking on us. Check your notifications routinely for all of the channels you follow because they seem to be getting turned off quite a bit. Anyway, that's what I have. Thanks everyone, and have the good rest of your day.